Emily stood outside her mother's apartment, her pulse drumming fast enough for her to feel it in her fingertips. The hallway smelled faintly of lilies and old varnish, the scent of every childhood visit. Beside her, Ryan adjusted the cuff of his navy shirt with calm precision. He looked immaculate, as he always did, and his unflappable poise only made her own nervousness more noticeable. She glanced at him, trying to read his expression. He offered her a small, confident smile. "Ready?" he asked. Emily tried to match his composure. "I think so," she whispered, though her voice betrayed her. This was the moment she had been waiting for and dreading in equal measure. Her mother, Margaret, would finally meet the man Emily had chosen. All week she'd rehearsed how it would go. Her mother's surprise, her delight, her proud little nod of approval. Everything would fall into place. It had to. Emily took a deep breath, brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, and reached for the doorbell. Before she could press it, Ryan gently caught her hand. His touch was steady, deliberate, almost ceremonial. "Let me," he said softly, and gave the button a firm, measured push. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of their breathing. Then footsteps on the other side. Familiar, slow, unmistakably her mother's. The door opened. Margaret stood framed in the doorway, blinking in surprise as she took in the sight of her daughter and the poised stranger beside her. A flicker of recognition, then warmth lit her face. "Emily!" she exclaimed, and her gaze moved to Ryan. "And you must be the young man I've heard about." Ryan extended his hand with practiced charm. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Mrs. Caldwell." Margaret hesitated for the briefest moment before taking his hand. Her smile widened, but her eyes lingered on him longer than necessary, as if she were trying to catch a shadow hiding behind his politeness. The air held that awkward sweetness that often clings to first meetings. "Well, don't just stand there," she said finally, stepping aside. "Come in, both of you." As they crossed the threshold, Emily's nervousness melted into a fragile hope. Everything was going fine, better than fine. She couldn't see, or perhaps refused to see, the faint crease that remained between her mother's brows. Ryan's polite laughter mingled with her mother's soft welcome as they made their way toward the kitchen, the hum of the kettle filling the silence that followed. Emily felt her shoulders loosen. This was the beginning, she thought. The moment her two worlds would finally meet in harmony. She had no idea how quickly that illusion would begin to unravel. The kitchen glowed with late afternoon sunlight, filtered through lace curtains that softened everything it touched. Margaret's home had always carried the comforting scent of cinnamon, tea, and the faintest trace of soap. Emily had never realized how much that smell meant to her until she stepped inside with Ryan. Until the familiar collided with the unfamiliar. Margaret moved gracefully around the small space, pouring tea into ceramic cups painted with fading blue flowers. "Sugar? Honey?" she asked, her tone even measured. "Honey, please," Ryan said with a courteous nod. His voice had the composure of someone used to being listened to. Every word sounded intentional, carefully placed. Emily watched as her mother poured the tea and set a warm plate of apple tart between them. Ryan thanked her, complimenting the aroma, the decor, the coziness of the apartment. He had a way of making his praise sound polished, as though he'd rehearsed kindness until it became an art form. Margaret smiled politely but said little. She stirred her tea, watching the honey dissolve. "So Ryan," she began, "Emily's told me a bit about your work, but I'd love to hear more from you directly." He straightened slightly in his chair. "I manage operations at a logistics firm," he explained. "Efficiency and planning are everything in our field. You can't let chaos in, or the whole system falls apart." Margaret nodded, her eyes steady on him. "And outside of work? What do you enjoy?" He thought for a moment before replying. "Structure," he said finally, then laughed, realizing how it sounded. "I mean, I like things done properly. I value order. Whether it's work, family, or home. I believe everything functions best when there's a plan." Emily beamed at him, mistaking his rigidity for confidence. "He's incredibly organized," she added eagerly. "You should see how he keeps everything under control." Margaret's expression softened for a moment. "That's admirable," she said, though her voice carried a faint undertone of curiosity, perhaps even caution. The conversation drifted from work to hobbies, to the neighborhood, to Emily's childhood. Ryan answered every question perfectly, never fumbling for words, never revealing more than he intended. When he smiled, it was charming. When he paused, it was deliberate. He seemed to know exactly who he wanted to be in her mother's eyes. Emily, sitting close enough to feel the warmth of his arm, felt proud. Everything was going just as she had hoped. She imagined her mother thinking, he's perfect for her. But across the table, Margaret stirred her tea again, the spoon tapping the porcelain like a quiet metronome. She noticed the precision in Ryan's posture, the faint stiffness behind his smile, and the way Emily seemed to lean toward him for reassurance. "I'm glad you came," Margaret said finally. "It's always good to see who makes my daughter happy." "Thank you," Ryan replied smoothly, his eyes briefly flicking to Emily. "That's all I want, to make her life better, more stable." Margaret smiled again, though this time it didn't reach her eyes. The kettle clicked off behind her, and for a moment, the apartment was filled only with the sound of cooling metal. When they finally stood to leave, Emily hugged her mother tightly. "See? I told you he's wonderful," she whispered. Margaret hugged her back, but as the door closed and silence settled once more, she found herself staring at the empty teacups, one sweetened with honey, one untouched. Something about the afternoon lingered uneasily in her chest, like a note that refused to resolve. Night had already draped itself over the city when Emily returned to her mother's apartment. The street lamps outside flickered, throwing slow-moving shadows across the kitchen walls. Margaret was there, as always, sitting by the table with her cup of chamomile tea. The soft steam curled upward, caught in the dim yellow light. Emily slipped off her coat, her cheeks still glowing from the evening's excitement. "I think it went really well," she said, unable to hide her smile. "Didn't it? He was polite, he made you laugh." "Well, almost." She chuckled, lowering herself into the chair opposite her mother. Margaret stirred her tea in silence, the spoon clinking gently against porcelain. "He was very proper," she said slowly. "You've chosen someone serious." Emily nodded eagerly. "Exactly. Reliable, steady. He's the kind of man who knows what he wants and takes care of things. Don't you think?" Margaret looked at her daughter, her eyes full of warmth and worry. "He certainly knows what he wants," she murmured. She hesitated, searching for the right words, then added quietly, "But I'm not sure he knows how to care." Emily frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Margaret sighed and set her spoon down. "I can't explain it, Em. It's not something he said. It's what he didn't say. There's a distance about him. A coldness under the surface. You didn't feel it?" "No," Emily replied, her tone sharpening. "You're reading into things. He's thoughtful, that's all. Not everyone has to fill the silence." Her mother's voice remained gentle, though her words carried the weight of intuition. "I've met many people in my life, darling, and sometimes you just feel something isn't right. A shadow and a smile, a pause that lasts a little too long. You may call it instinct, but I've learned to trust it." Emily crossed her arms, defensive now. "You just don't know him. He's disciplined, not cold. And maybe you don't see it yet, but he makes me feel safe." Margaret leaned forward, her expression softening. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want you to be careful. Love can blind us to things we don't want to see." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The clock ticked steadily above the sink, each second stretching into the next. The smell of tea and baked apples still hung faintly in the air, now tinged with something heavier, unspoken fear. Emily finally pushed back her chair. "I appreciate your concern," she said stiffly, "but you're wrong about him. He's good, Mom. You'll see." Margaret gave a small, sad smile, the kind that carried both love and surrender. "I hope I'm wrong, sweetheart," she whispered. "Truly, Ido." Emily kissed her mother on the cheek and went to her old bedroom, the door closing softly behind her. Margaret remained at the table, her tea long gone cold, staring at the empty hallway. A mother's heart doesn't need proof, she thought. Simply knows. The morning broke clear and golden, the kind of day that promised to be kind. Emily woke early, her mind buzzing with anticipation. Today she and Ryan were driving to his parents' countryside home. A weekend getaway, as he'd called it, but she knew it meant much more. It was the next step, the silent test every relationship eventually meets. Family. By the time she stepped outside, Ryan was already waiting by his car. He leaned casually against the hood, his sunglasses reflecting the pale blue sky. "Right on time," he said with a grin that was as polished as the silver car behind him. Emily smiled back, sliding into the passenger seat. "Of course. Wouldn't want to be late for my first royal introduction." Ryan chuckled, starting the engine. "They'll love you," he said easily. "Just be yourself. And maybe, don't worry if they seem a bit formal. They like things done a certain way." "A certain way?" she repeated, curious. He shrugged, eyes on the road. "You'll see. They're good people, just precise. You know, routines, rules, order." He spoke with fondness, but there was an edge of warning under his tone, subtle but unmistakable. The city slowly fell away behind them, replaced by wide stretches of road that shimmered in the sunlight. Fields unfurled on either side, golden and endless. Emily rolled down the window slightly, letting the warm air brush against her skin. The world smelled of earth and freedom. She felt herself relax. "This place sounds lovely," she said after a while. "You've told me so much about it. It must be peaceful." Ryan smiled faintly. "It's perfect," he replied. "My parents built it from scratch. Every detail exactly the way they wanted. You'll understand when you see it." He reached over, brushing his hand against hers on the console. "They're very particular about the property. Please try to stay on the stone paths, okay? My mom gets anxious about the grass being trampled. And don't pick any fruit unless you're offered. They keep everything organized." Emily laughed softly. "I think I can manage that. Sounds like they take good care of it." "They do," Ryan said, his expression unreadable. "They believe order keeps people honest." The words hung between them, strange and heavy. Emily chose not to ask what he meant. Instead, she watched the landscape shift. Clusters of trees, old wooden fences, the occasional farmhouse. Her excitement returned in flickers. She pictured herself among Ryan's family, smiling, blending in effortlessly, proving her mother's doubts wrong. As they turned off the highway and onto a narrow dirt road, Emily caught sight of a wrought iron gate in the distance. Beyond it lay a garden that seemed to shimmer under the sun. Too perfect to be real. Rows of roses in disciplined symmetry, trees pruned into geometric shapes, grass that looked as though it had never known imperfection. Ryan slowed the car and smiled. "Welcome," he said, his voice proud but strangely reverent. "This is home." Emily stared through the windshield. Her breath caught somewhere between wonder and unease. The estate was beautiful, breathtaking, even, but there was something unsettling about its stillness. Not a leaf out of place, not a sound but the hum of the engine. It was the kind of beauty that didn't invite you in. It warned you not to disturb it. The iron gates opened with a slow metallic groan, and Ryan guided the car along a narrow cobblestone drive lined with rose bushes. The air smelled of lavender and cut grass, sharp and clean, almost sterile. Emily leaned closer to the window, admiring how meticulously everything was arranged. It looked like a painting, one where every brushstroke had been corrected until no trace of spontaneity remained. At the end of the path stood a large country house, pale stone with tall white shutters and a roof that gleamed in the sunlight. A wide veranda wrapped around the front, framed by potted hydrangeas in perfect symmetry. Even the gravel in the driveway seemed arranged with purpose. "They've really kept it beautiful," Emily said softly. Ryan's lips curved in a faint smile. "They take pride in their work," he replied, turning off the engine. His voice carried the kind of reverence one might use in a chapel. Before Emily could step out, a woman appeared at the top of the stairs, a vision of controlled grace in a cream linen dress. Her silver hair was tied in a low bun, her movements measured. "There she is," Ryan said, already opening his door. "My mother." Elaine Whitmore descended the steps, her smile bright and precise. "Ryan," she greeted, her tone warm but polished. "And you must be Emily." Her eyes scanned Emily from head to toe, not with hostility, but with a kind of assessment, as if she were evaluating a piece of furniture that might or might not fit the house. "It's so lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Whitmore," Emily said, offering her hand. Elaine took it gently, her touch cool. "Please call me Elaine. Welcome to Fairhaven." She glanced past Emily toward the car. "Victor's around back, working near the tool shed. He'll be along shortly." As if on cue, A tall, broad-shouldered man appeared from around the corner of the house. His hands were covered in soil, but his posture was straight, his expression proud. "There's my boy," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "And this must be the young lady we've heard about." Emily smiled nervously. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Whitmore." "Victor," he corrected kindly, though his eyes remained sharp. "We're glad you could join us. Ryan doesn't bring guests here often." Elaine laughed softly. "He's protective of his sanctuary," she said. "But I'm sure you'll understand once you've seen the garden." They led her around the side of the house. The garden stretched endlessly. Rows of flowers, fruit trees, and trimmed hedges forming intricate patterns like a living maze. Every inch looked tended by invisible hands. There wasn't a wilted petal or a fallen leaf in sight. "It's incredible," Emily murmured. "Nothing incredible about it," Victor said with quiet pride. "Just consistency. We work hard to keep things in order. A place like this can't survive chaos." Ryan's hand brushed hers, a silent reminder to listen rather than speak. Elaine smiled, gesturing to a marble bench under an oak tree. "Sit, dear. You've had a long drive. I'll bring some lemonade." Emily obeyed, trying to relax. The perfection around her was impressive, but something about it made her uneasy. Like being in a museum where even the air wasn't allowed to move freely. The silence here wasn't peace, it was control. From the veranda, Elaine called out pleasantly, "And please, dear, do stay on the paths. The lawn is still recovering from its last trimming." Emily smiled, though the request sent a strange shiver through her. She nodded obediently. She was a guest here after all, one step out of line, and she felt the entire garden might hold its breath. That evening, the Whitmore estate glowed like a lantern against the falling dusk. Fireflies drifted above the hedges, but even their soft light seemed to respect the boundaries of the perfect garden. Emily stood on the veranda after dinner, listening to the rhythmic chirp of crickets and the faint ticking of the grandfather clock inside. Everything was so still it felt rehearsed. Dinner had been exquisite. Roasted vegetables, lemon chicken, and bread baked by Elaine herself. Conversation, however, had been less comfortable. Every topic seemed to circle back to order, routine, and the importance of self-control. Victor spoke as though discipline were a virtue above all others. Elaine nodded along, occasionally glancing toward Ryan with proud approval, as if her son were a living testament to their philosophy. Emily had smiled through it all, trying to fit her laughter into their rhythm. She had even convinced herself that her unease was just nerves, until Elaine said, "We believe happiness is a matter of rules. Don't you agree, dear?" The question had been delivered sweetly, but there was an unmistakable weight behind it, a polite demand for alignment. Emily had hesitated before replying, "I suppose some structure helps, yes." Elaine's smile had widened, satisfied. "Exactly. Without boundaries, people lose themselves." Now alone on the porch, Emily exhaled slowly. She could still hear the echo of those words in her mind. Boundaries. Order. Control. They weren't just values here, they were commandments. Ryan joined her a few minutes later, stepping quietly onto the veranda. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his body warm against the chill of the night air. "You were wonderful at dinner," he said softly. "They really liked you." Emily smiled, though her lips felt tight. "They're very different from what I expected." He chuckled. "You mean strict?" "Maybe just particular," she corrected. "Everything here feels so precise. It's beautiful but almost too much. Like there's no room for mistakes." Ryan's gaze drifted toward the garden. "There's nothing wrong with precision. My parents built this place out of discipline. Every tree, every hedge. It's all a reflection of who they are. They believe order keeps things from falling apart." "And you?" she asked quietly. "Do you believe that too?" He looked at her then, his expression unreadable. "It's what I was raised to believe," he said simply. "And they were right. Look around. Nothing here breaks, nothing here rots." Emily turned toward the dark outline of the orchard. The air smelled faintly of citrus blossoms and wet soil. "It's beautiful," she admitted, "but it feels like even the wind isn't allowed to move." Ryan laughed softly. "You sound like my mother when she's teasing." "Come on," he said, pulling her gently toward the garden steps. "You haven't seen the orchard up close." She followed him down the stone path, careful not to step off it. Rows of fruit trees stretched before them, each one perfectly shaped. The grass between them was so evenly cut it looked unreal. The fruit, apples, pears, plums, hung in neat clusters untouched. "Don't the birds ever come?" she asked. "Not anymore," Ryan replied. "My father keeps things in balance. He doesn't like interference." She nodded, though a quiet unease crept into her chest. The orchard was lovely but lifeless. No rustle of wings, no hum of insects, just silence heavy and complete. "Come back," Elaine's voice called from the house. "It's getting cold." Ryan smiled. "See? Always watching out for us." As they walked back, Emily glanced once more over her shoulder. The orchard gleamed under the moonlight, rows of fruit like jewels under glass. For the first time she wondered whether perfection might be another kind of prison, one that smiled while it held its guests in place. The next morning arrived wrapped in a thin veil of fog that clung to the edges of the orchard. Emily woke to the sound of distant voices, Victor's deep baritone and a lighter, unfamiliar tone, strained and urgent. She slipped out of bed, drew her sweater around her shoulders, and moved to the window. A man stood by the gate, hat in hand, his clothes dusty from the road. He looked like a farmer, tired eyes, weathered hands, the kind of person who lived by the mercy of the land. Victor stood opposite him, posture rigid, expression calm but cold. Even from the window, Emily could sense the tension. She hurried downstairs. When she reached the porch, Elaine was already there, standing with her arms crossed, the picture of polite detachment. "Good morning," Emily began, but Elaine silenced her with a faint shake of her head. "Stay back, dear. It's nothing for you to worry about." Still, Emily lingered at the edge of the steps, pretending to admire the flower beds while straining to hear. "Please, sir," the man was saying, his voice cracking. "My son. He wandered onto your land again. He's just a boy. I'm sorry for the trouble, but could you let him be? He meant no harm." Victor's reply was even, almost too calm. "Your family has been warned before. Boundaries are there for a reason." "I know," the man said quickly. "But he's only 9. He saw the fruit trees. He doesn't understand." Victor glanced toward the orchard. If he doesn't learn now, he never will. Ryan had appeared by then, his arms folded as he watched from behind his father. "We can't have people trespassing," he said quietly. "It's not just about fruit, it's about respect." The farmer's voice broke. "Please. He's a good boy. I'll make sure he never comes near again." For a brief moment, Emily thought Victor might soften. His face seemed to ease. Then he stepped closer, his shadow falling across the man. "You'll keep him away," he said, "because if I find him here again, I won't be so patient." Something inside Emily twisted. The man lowered his gaze, murmured a thank you, and backed away, clutching his hat as though it were his last defense against shame. When the gate shut behind him, silence returned as swiftly as it had been broken. Victor turned to Ryan, who gave a short nod of approval, as if some lesson had been reinforced. Elaine exhaled slowly, her composure untouched. "Some people never learn to stay within limits," she said softly, then turned back toward the house. Emily remained frozen, her heart tight. The man's desperation echoed in her mind. There had been no cruelty in his plea, only fear. And yet, the Whitmores had treated him like an inconvenience, a blemish on their perfect landscape. Ryan joined her on the porch, his tone light, as though nothing unusual had happened. "You shouldn't look so troubled," he said. "My father doesn't enjoy being harsh. He just believes in order." "Order," Emily repeated quietly. "Is that what that was?" He gave her a curious look, half smiling. "You'll understand one day. Rules protect what's good. Without them, everything decays." But Emily's gaze stayed fixed on the road where the farmer had disappeared, a trail of dust rising behind him in the morning sun. She wasn't so sure anymore that the only thing being protected here was goodness. The day stretched heavy and bright, the sun pressing down on the immaculate rows of trees, until even the shadows stood still. Emily tried to distract herself by helping Elaine in the kitchen, washing fruit, arranging flowers, but her mind kept drifting back to the man at the gate, to his trembling voice, and to Victor's unyielding calm. By mid-afternoon, Ryan suggested a walk. You haven't seen the far end of the orchard, he said, his smile easy. There's a view of the hills you'll love. Emily agreed, eager for a breath of air not yet filtered by someone else's rules. They followed the winding stone path, the grass glistening on either side as if each blade had been polished. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang once, and then stopped, as though realizing its mistake. They had just reached the farthest row of pear trees when a rustle broke the stillness. Ryan stiffened instantly. Emily turned toward the sound and saw movement near the fence, a small figure darting between the trunks. A boy, barefoot, no older than 9 or 10. His shirt was torn, his hair wild from the wind. He reached up and plucked a single pear, clutching it with both hands as though it were treasure. Hey! Ryan's voice cracked through the quiet like a whip. Stop right there. The boy froze, his wide eyes catching the sunlight. For a moment he looked ready to run, but Victor's voice carried from behind them, firm and thunderous. Stay where you are. Emily turned. Victor was approaching fast, his stride purposeful, Elaine close behind. How had they come so quickly? It was as if the garden itself had warned them. The boy trembled, his small fingers digging into the fruit. I'm sorry, he whispered. I just wanted one. My papa, he said, the trees. Victor snatched the pear from his hands. Your father was warned, he said coldly. And so were you. Please, Emily said suddenly, stepping forward. He's just a child. He didn't mean any harm. Victor didn't look at her. His gaze remained fixed on the boy. A child learns by consequence. A garden survives by discipline. Ryan stood silent beside his father, his expression unreadable. Only his clenched jaw betrayed discomfort. Or was it agreement? Victor took the boy by the arm, not roughly but with authority. You'll remember this lesson next time, he said, leading him toward the gate. Emily moved to follow. But Elaine's voice stopped her, soft and measured. Don't interfere, dear. It's important for Ryan to see this. For all of us. Emily's heart pounded. See what? She demanded. Humiliation. Elaine's smile didn't falter. Correction. Victor opened the gate, released the boy onto the dirt road, and placed the pear in his small hands. Take it, he said. Now you know its worth. The boy nodded quickly, too frightened to speak, and ran down the road toward the distant fields. When Victor returned, he wiped his hands on his handkerchief as though brushing away dust. That's the last time, he said simply. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to retreat from the trees. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in her guest room, staring out at the orchard. The moonlight painted everything in silver, perfect and untouched, except for one faint mark in the grass near the fence, where the boy had stood. Ryan came to her door, his tone quiet, almost apologetic. You shouldn't take it so personally, he said. My father's ways are old-fashioned, but they keep things right. Emily turned to face him. Right for whom? He hesitated, then said softly. For those who deserve to belong here. She watched him go, a hollow ache spreading in her chest. Outside, the trees swayed faintly, whispering secrets in the dark. And for the first time, the orchard no longer looked perfect, it looked haunted. The next morning dawned gray and silent. Clouds rolled low over the hills, pressing the light into a dull haze. The orchard, usually so sharp and vivid, looked muted, almost tired, as if even perfection had begun to wilt. Emily woke early, her chest heavy from a restless night. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about the boy, about the look on his face as he ran from the gate clutching that single pear. His fear had been raw, human, utterly out of place in this carefully manufactured paradise. Downstairs, she found Elaine arranging flowers at the table, every stem cut to the same length. Good morning, dear, she said without looking up. Sleep well. Emily hesitated. Not really. Elaine smiled faintly, trimming another stem. The countryside can be unsettling for city people. Too quiet, perhaps. It's not the quiet, Emily replied. It's what fills it. Elaine's hands paused for a heartbeat, then resumed their steady rhythm. You have a sensitive heart, she said gently. That can be a blessing. Or a burden. Before Emily could answer, Ryan entered the room, his expression unreadable. We're heading out to help Father with the orchard, he said. Would you like to join us? The hesitation in his tone was subtle, but Emily caught it. He wasn't inviting her, he was testing her. She nodded anyway. Yes, I'll come. They walked together through the garden, the silence between them thick. Victor was already by the far fence, tightening a length of wire. When he saw Emily, his expression cooled slightly, though his voice remained polite. Good morning. I hope you've rested. I have, she lied. Is everything all right? He gestured toward the orchard. We had some disturbance again last night. Someone tried the gate. Emily's pulse quickened. The boy. Victor shrugged. Likely. Or his father. People don't change easily. That's why rules exist. Before she could stop herself, Emily said, He's hungry, not dangerous. Ryan shot her a warning glance. Victor straightened, eyes narrowing. Hungry people learn to earn what they eat, he said coldly. That's the way of the world. Something in Emily snapped. No, she said, her voice shaking. That's your way of the world. The rest of us are still allowed to care. The air between them went still. Elaine appeared on the path behind them, her expression perfectly composed. Emily, she said softly, you're a guest here. We expect respect. Emily's hands trembled, but she didn't back down. Respect isn't silence. For a long, unbearable moment, no one moved. Then from the far end of the orchard came a faint sound, a rustle quick and light. Emily turned and saw a flash of color behind the fence. The boy again watching them with wide, frightened eyes. Victor moved instantly, striding toward him. Enough, he barked. He needs to learn. Emily ran before she even knew she'd decided to. The cold metal of the fence scraped her palms as she pushed it open. Run, she cried to the boy. He stumbled, startled, then bolted toward the trees beyond. Emily! Ryan shouted. Stop! But she didn't. She grabbed the boy's hand, pulling him toward the open field. Her heart thundered in her chest, the grass whipping against her legs. Behind them, Victor's voice echoed like thunder. Angry, commanding, powerless. When they reached the edge of the orchard, the boy turned to her, breathless. Thank you, he whispered, clutching the same pair he'd risked everything for. Emily knelt beside him, her lungs burning. Go home. Don't come back here. Ever. He nodded and disappeared down the dirt road. She stood there for a long moment, her body shaking. Not from fear but from clarity. The illusion had shattered completely. The Whitmore's world was perfect only because it allowed no one to be human. When she finally turned back toward the house, Ryan stood alone on the path, his face pale with disbelief. Why did you do that? He asked quietly. You've ruined everything. No, she said, her voice steady now. You already did. And then she walked past him, through the gate, down the road, leaving the orchard behind her. For the first time in days she could breathe. By the time Emily reached the edge of the village, the sun was low, painting the fields in gold and orange. She had guided the boy safely home, watched him disappear behind his small gate, and finally allowed herself to slow. The air felt lighter here, free of the tension that had wrapped itself around the Whitmore estate. She pulled her jacket tighter and hailed a passing taxi with shaking hands. During the ride back to the city, she stared out the window at the landscape. Rolling hills, scattered farms, and the quiet hum of life unaffected by perfection or control. Her mind replayed the events at the orchard, the way Victor had wielded authority like a weapon, the rigid smiles of Elaine, and Ryan's silent complicity. When Emily arrived home, her mother was waiting, worry etched deep into her face. But the moment she saw Emily's eyes, bright, determined, and unbroken, her expression softened, relief washing over her. Mom! Emily breathed, the tension spilling out in a mixture of tears and laughter. It was worse than I could have imagined. Their world, their perfection, it's not real. It's control, cruelty hidden behind smiles. And Ryan. Her voice faltered for a moment, then strengthened. I see him for what he really is. Her mother embraced her, holding her tightly. I was afraid of this, she murmured. But you stood your ground. You did the right thing. Emily nodded, letting the tears fall freely. I couldn't stay. I couldn't be part of that. Not if it meant standing by while someone else, just a child, got hurt. I love him, but not like that. I won't marry someone whose heart is locked behind rules and fear. Her mother stroked her hair gently, a smile breaking through the worry. That's my girl. Courageous, compassionate, and wise. You've learned something important today. Not just about others but about yourself. About what kind of life and what kind of man you truly deserve. Emily leaned back, feeling the weight lift from her chest. I do know now, she said softly, a smile breaking through her tears. I know exactly the kind of person I want by my side. Someone kind, someone who cares about others, who values love over control. Her mother nodded, eyes glistening. And you will find him. I'm proud of you, Emily. Proud that you didn't compromise who you are. The two of them sat together sipping warm tea, the quiet hum of their home a balm against the harsh world they had left behind. Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in days, her heart unburdened. The lesson had been harsh, but it had opened her eyes to truth and principle, and she had emerged stronger. That night, as the city lights flickered outside the window and the world seemed calm once more, Emily made a silent promise to herself. She would never let appearances blind her. She would never let control, fear, or cruelty shape her choices. And she would always protect the innocent, no matter the cost. For the first time, Emily felt certain of her own heart, and confident that her future, built on honesty and compassion, was waiting for her.